I'm Matthias Wittmann. I'm a visual effects supervisor at Digital Domain, and my background is actually animation, where I even specialized on human facial animation. Many years ago, actually 8 years ago or so, I switched into the field of making interactive digital humans. And part of it was because I was interested in this whole interactivity. And at some point, I moved more towards autonomous humans, actually. So I would like to show you just a couple of steps, how that went down. And really from the early stages on, let me share my screen. That looked like this. Very early on, my first interactive human, he's doing something there, little Ashton, and then he's looking at us. And didn't matter where we were in space, he was always looking at us because it's augmented reality and he knows where the device is. And that was kind of fascinating for me to do this, even though it was so much simpler looking than all the film stuff I was working on before. Coming from Benjamin Button, doing this is kind of a step down in graphics, but it's just fun to see these things. Then we made another one that was more life-size and augmented reality. And this stewardess, she is beckoning to other people, but when I get closer, it's being triggered that she's actually starting looking at me and beckoning me. So there was just a little other trigger that was just dealing with distances and so. And later on, a few years later, not a few years later, it was almost 1 year only later, I wanted to do this in VR and used Unreal. And I wanted to see how far you can go if you use actually more film techniques, like capturing faces a little bit better and getting real motion capture and seeing how that is working together. And again, it's actually an interactive human. It's not so much an autonomous human. He's doing exactly what he was animated for, but not exactly. He's actually looking at me when he's talking to me, and he's pointing at me when I'm around in his vicinity. All those things were calculated based on angles and distance and all those things. And at some point, and I will jump forward, backward with sharing and not sharing. I can do this in time. What I learned from this one here in particular was when you get really close to a life-size virtual human, no matter how he looks like almost, but this one actually looked quite good when you get close at the time, 2015, it felt very, very personal suddenly. And your brain switches to, oh, wow, is this, I mean, it's obviously animated, but it feels so alive. But then in the same year, 2015, I actually saw Mark Sager's neural network driven Baby X. And that changed my whole thinking pattern of how to approach those automatic people and how to trigger them and how to do something. While at the time, I had no idea what neural networks exactly are. They sounded great. I thought, oh, neural network, great. It's like a brain. So, and then I learned with the time, it's not like a brain. It's kind of like a building block of a brain. If you would have thousands of neural networks and you put them into a major neural network and it trains from that, yeah, you might get close to a human brain, but a human brain is really complex. So, and you saw in Mark's talk already, yes, that is a really complex thing that we don't really completely understand how that works. He understands it definitely much more than I would ever. So, but what I got as a point from what I learned there is that the impulse should not be directly the input that is coming in. So let's say the input that the character gets should not be the trigger for its action, which means if you are getting in the vicinity of a character like this one here, and I think, let me share again because we go forward, backward. Let's go to the next one. You get in his vicinity, he's being triggered to look at me because I'm in a certain angle of him. So this is kind of a demo mode. Oh, he's alive, he's moving. Oh, and now he's looking at me. And he even is being triggered when I'm nodding because he sees the nodding. He's doing also a nodding, a motion captured nodding. So it looks nice. I'm shaking my head. Didn't read this. Oh, but this one. Oh, no, don't this. And it all felt really nicely alive, but it was directly triggered. I built 3 years later another VR person that looked a little bit more sophisticated, and you can see always that I built those in stages and see that I get it as natural looking as possible, even with direct triggering. Look at this cube, look at the cube, and follow the cube with the body, lean back when the cube is coming too close. It's a very direct triggering. But coming back to what I just observed there with this baby was, well, that is too direct. You don't want this. You want the character to actually, let's say, be interested and maybe annoyed or curious. And these should be the reasons for it to move. I still use the angle and the distance. I add actually speed. So if something is moving fast or slow, but this influences how interested the character is. So suddenly I have this hand in front of him and I move it around, and this will loop now a few times. If you notice, this character is not constantly looking at the hand just because it's close. He's looking at me from time to time because there is an underlying AI, you could say. It's self-written, but it's based on short-term memories of what he just saw, how important this is for him, how interesting it is, and how much the interest level of the whole thing decays. And well, the hand goes close to him. He definitely looks at it. But then there's a moment of, well, okay, now I've seen it. I know what it is. Now he's looking at me again because I'm more interesting. And he looks back at the hand when it's moving, actually, because there's motion, and motion is just something we are very receptive to. It's actually learning from filmmaking and all those things. This motion is something we immediately look at. Light areas or bright areas in the picture is something we would look at. I didn't implement it even in this character, but this would be something I totally would do in future, making this a little bit more sophisticated in terms of what he's receiving there. But the motion feels suddenly much more natural. His reaction, his passive reaction just on motion became much closer to how I would expect a person to actually react. Now, speaking about vision, computer vision is a great thing. And we all like machine learned stuff nowadays because machine learned results are just the greatest in a way they are. And I'm not even ironic. Actually, it is really cool. And computer vision is also cool. But computer vision is not solving all your problems. Just because you use computer vision, that doesn't mean that your character is suddenly smart. Because computer vision is just very good in seeing things and defining what it is. So, for example, this character could get a machine vision system that understands what a chair is. So if it looks around it and it sees a chair, it could think, oh, this is a chair. But what are you doing with it? It's not doing anything with it just because it knows now it's a chair. There is no reason for it to act on it. So there's always something where you actually need context. So, and I just see all my notes are moving around here like crazy. If you see a chair and you don't have a need for a chair, it's just a thing. It doesn't matter if you know that it's a chair. If you know that a chair is good for resting, then it matters to you if you can get tired. So you have to think about, should I make my character tired, or should I give him attributes for getting tired with the time? If it's getting tired with the time, it would have a really good reason when it sees a chair to sit down. Or if it knows that it is in a concert, oh, there's my seat, I sit down. But if you just put in a chair and let your character sit down, that is kind of stupid and it doesn't really look very human-like. So it's not done with having great computer vision that is just telling you what an object is. You actually have to put it into context. And this is the difficulty of the whole thing. The meaning of an image depends on the context. And while an image might be easy defined by computer vision, the context is what it makes really, really complicated to do actually something with it. Now, how about conversation? Conversational ability. And let me share again. I have to, sometimes I speak a bit fast probably today because I figured I have too much to talk about today. Conversational ability was very easy in the beginning when I made my interactive humans. They were basically, since he already knew my nodding and shaking head, he could actually ask questions. And I could answer yes. And then he knows, oh, I said, yes, cool, do these things, do that thing. So it's great. I don't need any kind of interface. I can just nod or shake my head for the next steps. Tom was also pretty smart. Actually, he understood yes and no because we put in some voice recognition in there, but only for yes and no. And this is why most of the time I just let him.
Around here? Wait, don't tell me.
Yeah, he got around it. I didn't have to tell him anything because he just answered the question himself. So it was a longer story. I didn't want to do constantly yes and no. So he's just taking over from time to time. It becomes really complex when you actually go into autonomous realm. And in 2019, we started developing Douglas at Digital Domain, and later on then Zoe. And Zoe is a real autonomous human, actually, if you want. I mean, I say a real autonomous human, it is a real interactive personality where you can just start talking.
I'd love to teach you how I work. If you want to skip my introduction, just say skip introduction. See the menu in the top right-hand corner. This is my memory. Try out now by telling me your name.
My name is Matthias.
It's a recording, obviously.
Nice to meet you, Matthias.
So not only, as you can tell, this was somewhat scripted.
Can you get information directly from the internet?
And yes, she can actually.
Yes, if you want me to search for an answer on the internet, start your phrase with tell me.
Tell me about Pablo Picasso.
Let me check online for that. According to Wikipedia, Pablo Ruiz Picasso.
And then she can also talk very free line.
What's my name?
Your name is Matthias.
Because she knows me through computer vision.
Very nice. How did you know?
I'm psychic like that. Do you have a favorite color?
Yeah, as you can tell,
Mine
she's
is
just
blue,
making up
like the
stuff.
sky.
She doesn't know about her computer vision.
You should know that my favorite color is orange.
Great. I like orange too.
Goodbye, Zoe.
The Zoe is great. It's really fun talking to her. And she sees, she hears, she memorizes stuff. She can be scripted. She can use the internet for answering stuff. She can talk freely. And she looks pretty amazingly real because of our neural rendering we're using also on top of her. So what else do you need actually? Now, here's the thing with conversation. Like with vision, conversation is not done with understanding words. It's not just throwing an NLP and natural language processing software onto it and figuring out, oh, what are the words? It's again about context, and it's understanding what's actually really happening. So we run into two really bigger complications with conversation in those scenarios like the autonomous virtual humans. So the first one is that everything is text-based. In the moment we plug everything together through I'm saying something, it is voice, it's being transformed through speech to text into text. The text is being sent to a bot, in our case, to 3 bots at the same time. And it comes up with answers for that text that came in there. Now, here's the issue. When I'm not talking fluently, if I just say something, then I think about it a little bit and want to add something, these systems don't necessarily know about this. They only hear words. The NLP makes a nice sentence out of it somewhat, but at some point it thinks, oh, apparently you're done, and sends this over to the bot, or the bot gets it on the fly and decides at some point, oh, I guess we are done. Let me give you an answer. And then the bot gives you an answer, but you are just finishing your thought, and it happens that you say something and the autonomous human speaks back to you, and we collide with text because it's not as smart. It is smart with figuring out a nice answer. It is not smart in understanding when I'm done speaking, which is actually a really, really difficult issue to solve when you think about it. We think about it a little bit later, a little bit more. Another one is actually the autonomous human always thinks you're talking to it, which is most of the time the case because we are always making these presentations and you show what something is and so, but in reality, you want to have an autonomous character that is smart enough to understand that you are not in the moment talking to her, for example, you're talking to your buddy maybe next door, or it is a Zoom call. She's created for Zoom because of the pandemic. So we can run her through Zoom, and we can be a meeting with 20 people and she's one of it. She will not understand that she is not meant. So when we are talking, she's just confused and she will just go to sleep at some point because she's not interrupting you, but you can interrupt her actually. So this is conversation. What about emotions? the emotions are obviously something that are also very important to form a character. All the behavior of the character is based or is influenced by emotions. So everything the character is doing should be at least influenced by emotion. And emotions, you really have to think about your design of your emotion engine, because you need some emotion engine to make it really interesting. Else you don't really have to do work on autonomous humans, then you just make some automatic answering machine or so. But if you work with autonomous humans, you need emotions, and those are not something that switch on and off. They are floating values that are constantly getting into the whole system and affecting everything from the motion, the voice, the reply could be different, and some actions might be triggered just through emotions. And you can think about what could invoke emotions. There are a couple of clear ones. Pain can obviously evoke emotions. Now you can say she doesn't feel anything, but you can make her feel, obviously. Sad stories can invoke emotions. So if the user says something very sad, mimic of the user can invoke emotions. The tone of the voice could evoke emotions. If you have systems that can actually read the tone of your voice and can come up with values for it, oh, this sounds more negative, and oh, this sounds more happy, then great, use it. Use everything you can get from the emotional level, from the environment, and from the whole context. And in our case, you could even use tiredness, because we just said we want to know what a chair is and when to sit down. So tiredness can also trigger or influence your emotional level, because you can become cranky with it. The way how you handle all this emotional data is on you in a way, because now you are defining and designing the character of your autonomous human, the whole way how it would react. And that's funny. I actually shouldn't have left this. Let's go back. Oh, don't I have? Oh no, I took this out. Okay, now this one is nice because oh, there was conversations. Okay, I see now what happened here. So when I said conversations are difficult with interruption, that is true with people, because people can make all this pausing and so. But bots themselves, they are actually not necessarily interrupting each other, because they have a certain cadence of speaking. So that works into infinity quite often.
I like a lot of mystery and thriller books. Some of my favorites are Stephen King's books.
Do you have a favorite book of his? Mine is The Shining. It scared the crap out of me as a kid.
I think my favorite of his is The Stand. It's a long book, but it's so good.
So I had to get back actually to this one because it is relevant later on again. We were talking about emotions actually just right now. And in emotions, I said there are a couple of different triggers. In terms of Tom, there are these triggers of pain. Obviously, if you touch him in his face, he's not very happy about it, but you see he's also getting back to normal very quickly. With an emotion engine though, when he's being poked into his eye and into his nose, he stays actually angry for quite a while because that wasn't nice. So now you see he's cranky and he stays like this. And this is why you need something like an emotion engine, not a direct trigger. You need something like before, where it is not the touching that does the whole reaction and the emotion. It is the emotion engine that says, oh, wait a minute, something is touching. That is not nice. So now I'm unhappy. And this is why I brought this conversation from before. I said they are not interrupting each other, but actually they do. So sometimes it happens, and this can invoke emotions too.
It is also one of the least popular. Do you know anything about
That's what they do when they are being interrupted. They're just not happy about it. And they do eye rolling and stuff. So let's move on to the next, because time is running. Actually, it's about capturing the essence of a character. How would you capture all this stuff here? Now, in the beginning, that was, again, a little bit more easy because it was branching stories. You knew what's about to happen. You knew the scenario. You just need to capture it in a way that you can overrule it in game engine, so you can actually turn him in the right direction. So when you start speaking, he's turning to us. Well, back in the days, I had to capture facial and body motion separately because that was not possible at the same moment, not at least on this high quality. So I had to sync it up afterwards and put it all together then in Unreal. It is still more or less a branching story with a semi-interactive guy. So how would you do this with someone like Zoe? Well, you use Zoe Moses, the actual actress that was this character made of, and you capture a lot of stuff with her, and not just random stuff. It's actually a planned motion. So in this case, for example, this is an answer, a positive answer. I just wanted her to move how she moves when she's answering me in a positive way. And we did a lot of takes of this. And one of them is being used in that clip here down here. Oops. And you see, sometimes you don't see the hands because we are so close up, but she's probably using her hands here as well. But all her motion, her head motion, her body motion, this is all how the actual Zoe was moving. And funny enough, the timing of the facial animation works most of the time really very well. I think mainly because the head motion actually belongs to the body motion. That is a fairly important thing. You shouldn't detach the head motion from the body motion. We use it also for all the specials, like
the last script I was reading,
interrupting.
it was about cultivating play.
So that came for the interruption. That is actually also a direct motion just being triggered at the right moment. And also for saying goodbyes, tons of goodbyes.
Okay, see you next week. Bye. Oh, goodbye. Thank you for coming.
This is how it goes on and on.
Yeah.
And then, let me see. Now, why wouldn't I use machine learning also for those body motions? The reason for it is that machine learning is very likely, and I'm sure machine learning is the future of autonomous virtual human body motion, because machine learned motion is really getting better and better. And what I just saw for locomotion and fighting scenes, that the latest development from NVIDIA is really, really amazing looking, and I really love it. And machine learned body motion works particularly good for creating new variations of known repetitive motion patterns, like walks and strikes. Now, when you're talking, there is not necessarily a looping pattern, really. It is at least very difficult to define. What should I train the system with in terms of, oh, this person is now talking positively. Should I throw in all the animation clips? I just captured all the motion capture clips. They're not working against each other constantly because they are not even similar. They are quite often very different. And so therefore it is very difficult to train a system to not end up with your famous parallel hands next to each other, gesturing always at the same beat. So if I would approach this with machine learning, which I actually really plan to do at some point, I would probably take it apart, take the spine motion as a separate learned system, the arm basic motion with a basic sub rhythm coming from speaking as a separate system that is just slightly on top of the spine motion, and then having special gestures that are depending on things like location, size, importance, and throwing that in. But in the moment, and you would need on top of it a logic that is really, really intelligent and understands when to, how often to use it and how strong to use it. Else, again, you end up with, hey, I'm Zoe. It's really great to meet you. I'm moving my hands really in the right rhythm with my words, but it doesn't make any sense because no one talks like this, except some people holding a talk that actually I saw that looked really like that. But usually when you're in conversation, that's not the case. Oh, I see, man, the time is running like crazy. Damn it. But now imagine you have a crazy perfect created character. And it's actually moving great, and it's responding perfectly, and it's maybe already 3D like Zoe, and now you want to put it from 2D into 3D, which sounds funny because like VR and AR and holograms and stuff like that. And even though I have done this before, I have these VR characters, they were not really autonomous. They're not really completely autonomous. But when you are starting having conversation with an autonomous character and you go into 3D space, a whole bunch of new issues comes up. And it all comes down to, who am I talking to? Who is talking to me right now? Because you have this whole space in front of you. Imagine a booth or a kiosk situation. So the character's in the kiosk, but there are 15 people in front. Some are walking in the distance, some are walking past and they're close by, but some are standing in front of it. Maybe a couple of buddies. And they talk to each other about the whole thing. How should the autonomous human understand that they are talking to each other and not to it? It would have to first analyze, are the lips moving? Is the gaze going maybe to me or to someone else? But it may as well be the gaze is looking at the screen and talking to the body. Have you ever seen something like that? You know, this happens all the time, and every human would understand this. An autonomous human, most likely not that easily. You would have to give it some input for what's likely the current situation. So the whole context again becomes much more complicated. To maybe be able to figure out the direction where the audio is coming from. Also, I hear audio, it becomes text for me, but where did it come from? From the one moving the lips? Or did I just not see it because he was turned a little bit away from me from this direction? I don't know. So there are a lot of things you have to think about when going into that space and trying to solve it there. Let's quickly jump to this one here because it is also a very interesting aspect of the whole thing. Robots. Robots are pretty much, well, the reincarnation of what we try to do here with autonomous virtual humans. And as a matter of fact, on a higher level, the complications are all the same. So it all comes down to communication and understanding context. Those things, even so, if you see them sometimes on some shows like CES or so, I think they showed Amika, and Sophia is all over the place, and you can see her all the time. Whenever you hear great responses, something that is really reasonable, it's probably not autonomously created. It's most likely either someone speaking or it was pre-programmed. And I don't want to bring this down. They are really smart systems. And actually, I had the chance to work with Sophia for 2 weeks. I had to apply a couple of fax poses to her face and seeing if that's possible with her robotics there. And she was often just on the side, on the table, and while we had meetings, and she was always switched on. And from time to time, she made some noises or she moved around, turned her head. And you can say what you want. Sophia may look on the photo a little bit creepy, honestly. But in reality, if you see this in front of you and it's autonomously moving, even so little, your brain starts to trick you and tells you that, oh, that thing is alive. Damn, she sees me. She just smiled because I smiled. And you know, I totally know how to do stuff like this, and yet I'm still fooled by it. It is really, really funny. So the funny thing is that, or it was actually not that funny. We just, and Raphael actually spoke about this, what the internet reactions are sometimes about these things. And I just watched this video with Amika, and people said, oh, wow, this is so lifelike. This is totally real. This is now the next generation of AI. And someone just wrote in a comment, well, I think someone said in the background and answered for her. And I have to say too, because I mean, I do this stuff. So you watch these things and you, oh, wait a minute, this voice was a little bit too good, too human, a little mistake in the sentence. You don't do this as AVH, you don't make mistakes actually. And also the voice changes constantly. This person was trashed by the people because people really wanted to be it real. They said, wow, you're a hater. This is all fake news, what you're sending out there. They told him to be fake news, which is really funny because they just created fake news themselves, not knowingly, obviously. But this is what we really want so often. We want these things to be alive. We want them to be intelligent in a way because we want to be able to talk to them. And for some, it might be scary, but actually it is quite big fun once you do it yourself and talk to them. is it digitally or is it a robot? Doesn't really matter. It's really interesting. And then Philip, just very quickly, because we had this on the list with could we how can we possibly capture and store personality? And just because I don't want to waste too much time, we can't. And whatever you say, it's not happening. It's not happening in the near future. The reason is that to do this, I mean, really storing personality means you know how a person is actually reacting in every situation. Let's assume you could record all the decision making of a person through their lifetime. That would give you a ton of training material for, let's say, a super machine learned system that should at this point then know how this person is reacting when something happens. Or would it? Because it actually changes over time. First of all, you would have to decide which point in time of the life of this person do you actually want to snapshot in their behavior. Is it 56? Is it 16? Because the decisions will be very different. The overall person doesn't change, but the decision-making changes because their personality learns all these things. All the experience around influences how they will decide next time. And therefore, you can't take the whole thing of a person, you know, even if you would know it. Sometimes people think you know everything about a person when you just go online, get all the Facebook comments and all this stuff and Twitter, and then you know what this person is. You don't. This is just online. This gives you a brief idea of this person, but you don't have an idea what really ticks in that person. And well, let's say the only thing I could imagine is that at some point there is a brain scanner in a few hundred years, I don't know how long it would take, that really is able to scan your brain and maps it down and puts it on a really, really big server. And that could give you a chance of maybe capturing that moment in time, how that person would react if we would completely understand how our brain works. Since we don't, we only can make suggestions, or we can create autonomous humans inspired by. Well, nevertheless, we can be inspired by all the rule sets that life provides and try to implement whatever we seem to understand or decipher from it. However, we need to understand that showing self-awareness and sentience can be mimicked and can be faked. And while autonomous humans, digitally or robots, are becoming more and more sophisticated, it is most likely more on us how much we allow ourselves to believe them being alive.